Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 100th episode here on The Real World. Obviously, if you combine what we've done with other places and whatnot, then we are well over 100 episodes. But this is our celebration of 100 episodes of the Superhero Pantheon here on The Real World. And we wanted to do something a little special, a little bit different. We will not be reviewing a movie or television show. We're taking a break from Spider-Man, and we're going to do something pretty fun. We are going to discuss the 1989 Batman comic book, and not the year, but the continuity is what we are going to be discussing here tonight. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. Please leave a 5-star review of this podcast here at The Real World on either Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts these days. You're also letting people know where to find our other work. In addition to this podcast, please go back and listen to Kevin Ford. We did our last episode of Real Bad that was posted last week. Please go and check that out and find out what we thought of the final half of the final season of Better Call Saul, which my co-host still hasn't watched yet, but we're not going to judge him too harshly. Speaking of co-hosts, Brian to Brain is where you can find him on Twitter. He is Brian. He is here to also discuss the Batman 1989 comic book series, a limited run series that we will be discussing here tonight. Brian, people are not going to realize this, but you and I have not recorded a show in about a month or so. We banked a bunch of Spider-Man episodes for the month of August so that we could take a little bit of a break. And Brian, it feels like the world perpetually on fire is even more on fire these days, and not just because you have to have your air conditioning on while we record tonight.
I see what you did there. Yeah, it's 105 degrees in this dome we're in right now in California, this heat dome. So yeah, I mean, my air conditioning is on blast right now, and it's only blasting at 80 degrees, probably because I've been having it on for 48 hours straight, but what can you do? What can you do? I didn't watch Better Call Saul, but I will say I do love Cinnabon, and anytime you get Cinnabon over, more power to you. And more power to the people that put the little pecan and that caramel glaze on top. Love that little extra. Love my Cinnabon. Gotta get that tie in there. But in terms of Batman, I originally thought when Jerome proposes we were going to discuss the 89 comic that came out in 89, the tie-in comic with the movie, because I actually have a copy of Batman Returns when the Batman Returns comics came out in 91. I got it from my buddy's comic book shop. And I almost opened it. Well, I was so tempted, but I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to keep it in the plastic. I haven't opened it since. Actually, I never opened it at all. So it's got Michael Keaton on the cover, like the same kind of style that they try to emulate in this Batman 89 2021 version. So I was really excited when I found out it's a new follow-up, and essentially it's going to be the Batman 3, which we talked about when we did talk about or reviewed Batman Forever so many years ago already. But as you know, like Batman 3 was going to be a totally different movie with Tim Burton behind it, and with the Robin of it all, it was going to be Marlon Wayans. And if you look at the back cover, we got the hardcover edition, or at least I did. I'm looking at it right now, and you see like a black Robin, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then you're reminded that Billy D. Williams was Harvey Dent in the original movie, and then you look at the back cover, and it's like, oh my God, they got Billy D. Williams rights, or likeness rights, to be in the comic, and holy shit, him as fucking Two-Face is way better than Tommy Lee Jones, I think. Like, even just reading it, you can kind of picture the performance that Billy D. Williams would give with that kind of suaveness at the beginning when he's Harvey Dent, and then when gets really, really psycho in the Two-Face role, he would have done an amazing job, man. And more credit to him, because or I guess it's more like this myth now, what if, or what could have been. And like you hear this story about Tommy Lee Jones just being so annoyed with Jim Carrey on set that it's like that movie was almost like a chaotic production, like speaking of. So just kind of weird, man, like looking at this alternate perspective, because even in the comic itself, this Batman 89 comic, they talk about like alternate universes and the possibilities because of the whole nature of the coin and the coin flip. Possibility A, possibility B, splits into the two universes, that whole multiverse theory. So really interesting stuff, and I really thought they really got more into the Two-Face character in this version of it. So I think this would have been a much better movie overall if they released it as Batman 3. Definitely more so than Batman Forever, I think.
I am curious to see how different it would be because I think there are definitely some moments as I was reading through the book that made it feel too 2022. Like there are definitely some lines of dialogue. There are definitely some moments that made it feel more of this era as opposed to 1993 when I believe this purports to take place or thereabouts. So I think that is where my issue lies, and there's some things. I think that this was a pretty entertaining series to read, and if you read it with the idea of okay, what if Michael Keaton came back as Batman? What if Michelle Pfeiffer came back as Catwoman? What if Billy D. Williams got to play this role? It's just it's very very interesting to think about like what if this had all gone down and like the thing that is most interesting to me is that Billy D. Williams has never really gotten to play a role like this. So it would have been very very different for his career to have been able to play a Two-Face character. So it's fascinating to watch and to realize. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the book, I just want to go over kind of some notes beforehand. This is a continuation of the continuity that is established in the first two Batman movies. I think that's made pretty clear once we see basically Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. Makes it really clear that it takes place after Batman Returns. This was co-written by Sam Hamm, who is one of the screenwriters of the 1989 movies. It is a sequel, really the only look that we have had from this universe. Brian, I know you love this. A Robert Wool cameo from Crisis on Infinite Earths has basically been our only look into the Batman 89 universe since, and that's pretty entertaining. Michael Keaton apparently is not going to ever return as Batman in the DC EU, perhaps, maybe, question mark. I guess, and I don't want to get into Warner Brothers and HBO, but the Batgirl sequel's been canceled. I don't know that we are ever going to see the Flash movie, and he is not going to be an Aquaman. I guess Ben Affleck is replacing Michael Keaton. So, I mean, here's the good thing, Brian. Michael Keaton is possibly getting paid a lot of money to never play Batman on screen.
Well, hopefully not. And with all the crazy shit that's going down with Warner Brothers and Ezra Miller and all that stuff, from what I've heard, like they're committed to the Flash movie. Like it's gonna come out no matter what. Like it's gonna come out theatrically, and it's gonna come out with. I don't know. I mean, if you look at "Don't Worry, Darling" now, I mean, we're looking back now in this recording, but this whole chaotic thing with that, it's just like, I don't know, but it seems to have drawn more attention to the movie than it did before. So weird things can be like that with media and like social media. I don't know.
I mean, I think there is a huge difference between what's going on. I mean, "Don't Worry, Darling" is a complete mess, and just Google search what's been going on with that because we don't have time to get into it. But Ezra Miller's been involved in multiple criminal acts, so it's really really gross that they would even consider releasing this movie because of Ezra Miller's behavior. And look, Olivia Wilde maybe not morally, probably morally culpable for some things that happened on set, if we are to believe some of the stories that Florence Pugh has been saying. And again, we have no reason to doubt that. So it's very very different. Comparing those two, I think it's apples and oranges. But the one thing I will say is that regardless, even if Michael Keaton is in that movie, it's going to be tainted because of Ezra Miller's presence. And I cannot imagine a scenario where the Flash does well because I think too many people are going to stay home and it's going to be too divisive because Ezra Miller just will not stop being a terrible person. And look, they can do whatever they want, but at the end of the day, like you have to be responsible for their behavior, and Warner Brothers is not taking any responsibility for Miller's behavior, and it's really really concerning to me because they have done a lot of really terrible things.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, like I said, we'll see because I don't know what's going to happen a year from now. You know what I mean? Like, I do feel like a lot of like older generations, like they know Michael Keaton is Batman, but like I don't think my mom even knows who Ezra Miller is. So It's just this weird kind of like generational gap in terms of pop culture. Like my kind of range for pop culture is like if my mom was watching the Filipino channel and like the variety shows are talking about the main people, like it's usually like the hot music acts and stuff like that. It's never like Ezra Miller. You know what I mean? So I don't know how it in terms of like social media or like social awareness of it all. So that's kind of where I'm at because I'm not even sure like am I in a bubble? Is like this whole Ezra Miller thing in a bubble? Like my mom doesn't even know what's going on with all this stuff, and all she knows is that Michael Keaton's coming back, but that's all she knows. So it's kind of weird. So I don't know, but in terms of like the follow up to this movie or the follow up to the Batman '89, I was like kind of stoked because I was looking at this and like how they got the likeness rights, but the one thing that I didn't like, this kind of my first kind of criticism, is Jim Gordon's in this, but they didn't get the Jim Gordon likeness from like the first two movies, and they made him look like the comic book version. So I was kind of thrown off by that because I was like, man, if you're gonna go with it, go full, like, full committed. But it kind of threw me off, and there wasn't that many scenes with Barbara and Jim Gordon. So I was kind of disappointed with that too because I feel like there was a lot there missing on the table. But I don't know if it was because it was limited to 6 issues, but because they could have done like another six, I think. But they probably will. I mean, it's successful, so it never says on the back that this is like a limited run. So don't be surprised if we get more of the story and follow up. But I do. I mean, because they kind of based it on Winona Ryder. If you look at the artwork, and Winona Ryder, like it's clear like the facial features and stuff, like early '90s Winona Ryder, and that makes sense because she just did like two Tim Burton movies right, back to back, right around that time. So the casting would have been amazing, I think, compared to what we got in Batman Forever.
Except for Kiss on a Rose, which is still a banger. And I mean, I don't know. A better movie, maybe we don't get that song and maybe it's worth it, but damn, man, damn.
Well, when you mentioned the music too, I also want to say that like I think it's a suggestion because this is what I did. I listened to that ambiance music, you know what I mean, like for studying and stuff. But I put the Batman '89 and then Batman Returns ambiance while I was reading, and it just fits so well that I recommend doing that from now on. Like I never even thought of that before, but like ambiance reading, if you never read Lord of the Rings before and you enjoy the movies and you want to read the books, totally do the Hobbit ambiance while you read like the Hobbit or like Lord of the Rings music. Well, you know what I mean? Like I think that's could be something I'm going to do in the future, and I totally recommend doing that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that adding to the experience of reading the book. And there's a couple of other interesting things that we can talk about in terms of this. You really get the idea that there are two Gothams, but this book gets very specific and seemingly is trying to also work through some of the racial issues. And they're very clearly positioning Harvey Dent as Two-Face, but also kind of being from these two different worlds. Like clearly he has a lot of power as a district attorney, and it's only gaining more power throughout the book as he is basically going after Batman, but also coming from kind of this very poor area of the city. And you also have Robin. The one thing, my biggest complaint is probably the Robin name and how it kind of develops. Like the idea is that he broke up a robbery and now they're calling him Robin. And I kind of groaned at that. I groaned as hard as I did when they came up with Han Solo's name in the movie Solo. So yeah, it was kind of a wet fart, but I appreciated that they went in that direction. I also love that Bruce Wayne actually started using philanthropy in terms of like, I'm going to give money to school kids and they can go to college. And these are things that we have obviously seen in current times with the number of inner city schools getting this opportunity from these philanthropic billionaires, even though they should be paying taxes. But that's a whole another issue. So Bruce Wayne actually talking about using philanthropy, which is one of the biggest criticisms of the Batman character, also worth pointing out. So they're clearly going for some of these issues. I don't necessarily know that it jives with like the spirit of the Tim Burton Batman movies, but it is very interesting to see this book. I would say get a lot more political overtly than a lot of Batman projects. I mean, you know, in The Dark Knight, you have a little bit of the surveillance state and things like that, but I think it can be very esoteric and very vague. They're clearly going for something very specific here.
Yeah, so the other side of Gotham is Burnside, which is very like on the nose, I guess, because Two Face is gonna eventually, that's foreshadowing, gonna have a Burnside. It's kind of like this abandoned, not abandoned, but forgotten part of town. I've never heard of this part of Gotham, and I don't know if this is like new to this story, but introducing something like that kind of opens your eyes as to like A, the size of Gotham City, and B, like holy shit, there's this whole other side of Gotham City that they never talk about only because there's a lot of black people in it. Like that's, that says a lot. And I think that's kind of like supposed to open up your eyes a little bit about the real Gotham City as opposed to the one we've been like introduced to and like seeing the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years where it's like, a predominantly white city. But in reality, there's a lot of black folk in the city that we just don't see because they're on the other side of town. And they really emphasize that. And I was like, wow, this is some really like deep stuff, like socio-political kind of, you know, like, hey, like this is what's really going on. This is why you don't see certain people in certain parts of the city going on. And they even go further with it when they mention later on about the subway, how there was going to be this subway between the two sides of town that like lost funding halfway between, it got abandoned, and a lot of people like lost jobs, didn't have the opportunity to go across town to get better jobs. So this whole thing about this other side of town, I was just kind of blown away by, and I was like, God, we need more of this in the movies because this is some serious shit that you can explore and really like get down and dirty into. And I think that's kind of what the Batman tried to get into, but didn't like maybe didn't know like there was this other side of like other part of Gotham that even Matt Reeves didn't even know about. So like if they could explore something like that in the next Batman movie, I would be really fascinated with that because they really opened the doors here. And I felt like, man, like there's a lot of things going on, and the fact that Harvey Dent comes from the other side of town, and all this symbolism starts to appear, and like being a black man in a white man's world, that kind of thing, and it's just a lot of things going on. It makes the casting much more sense, like that. Harvey Dent is a black man. It makes more sense that he is a black man in this situation, or in this kind of storytelling. So, I'm more for like if since we didn't see Harvey Dent in the Batman, like let's make him an African American in the next movie.
Well, I think what is a little bit odd to me is that, okay, we have this story and the payoff feels very similar to the Batman because the idea is that there is corruption that basically goes all the way to the top, including police and politicians, and Bruce Wayne is even involved. And Bruce Wayne was not necessarily directly involved in what happened in the Batman, but his family was. So I do think that is something that is worth noting in terms of the similarities. But we also get some horniness with Catwoman and Batman again, which is always appreciated because they're apparently the only two people in mainstream superhero TV that are allowed to be horny with one another. When you think back to the 66 Batman, this year's The Batman, even a lot in Batman Returns as well. So basically a continuation of that. I want to talk about the fact that Robin prevents a police riot using paint and the portrayal of Harvey Bullock as a racist cop, which you want to talk about on the nose, that might almost be a little too on the nose as well. But I think it works. Like, of course, Harvey Bullock is going to be a racist cop who doesn't like anyone and also hates Batman. So it's just, I think it really works out. The characterization of Harvey Bullock works out. They didn't really make him look like a specific actor. It felt very generic to me, but I mean, like you could see like a Tom Sizemore playing Harvey Bullock in like a Batman 3, right?
Yeah, because I don't think the original guy was. He wasn't even a name. He's one of the characters. I can't think of his name, but he's definitely a character actor of that era, like an overweight Italian gentleman. I think he was that we've seen before.
Well, I don't think Harvey Bullock has never been in the movies, has he?
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of a different one. Harvey Bullock was like played by a white dude, I think, with a mustache in '89. Because
I don't think Bullock wasn't in them for. I mean, they had the. It's funny. The same guy who played Porkins in Star Wars was the guy I think you might be thinking of. That the Joker kills.
Oh, so that wasn't Bullock.
No, I don't think that was ever intended to be Bullock.
Okay, because I remember that scene and I was like, God, he has that shape that looks like Bullock, but I guess it wasn't him. So
it's not, but yeah, it's bringing that character in. I think works out really well. Of course, you have Harvey Dent going to the hospital after burning himself. I really like the fake out at the beginning of book 3 as we get a kind of a dream sequence. And basically a lot of positive things are happening for Harvey Dent. And it really does throw you off because they're trying to make it seem like, oh, he went into a burning building and didn't become Two-Face. And part of me was like, man, I kind of wish that maybe if they didn't go in the dream direction and go this exaggerated, but to have this tease of, oh, he goes into a factory and doesn't get burned, I thought that would have been really fascinating. But I think the dream reveal also worked itself out because of the connections that are made throughout the rest of the book, in that Harvey Dent is dealing with, he's almost dealing with a multiverse. Like he's dealing with, like, it's Gollum in a multiverse. I think that's the best way I would classify it. Brian, what do you?
To me, it's a multiverse thing going on in his head, but I think that's the only way he can interpret like the schizophrenia that's kind of developing in his head. Because remember, they mentioned the fumes that he inhaled, right? I forget what it was, but it causes like a lot of like damage to the brain, kidneys, liver, everything. So it seemed like it damaged his brain to the point where he was trying to interpret what was going on, and the best way his brain can interpret that was like, oh, like multiverse, choice, coin flip. Of course, there's two multiverses, and of course they mentioned that cat in the box thing, which is like the original explanation of the multiverse back in the day when I forget which scientists created that theory about putting a cat in the box, and one universe has the cat in the box, another universe has the cat in the box and it's dead or something like that. So that's where that kind of like in joke comes from. But I liked it a lot because I know people don't like Interstellar. I know it's been shit on the last 5 or 6 years since it came out, or I don't know, but I really like it. I like the whole fourth, fifth dimensional thinking, and this kind of ties into that a little bit, but it's just kind of like something internal. It's something kind of like to mess with your head a little bit, but at the same time, it's also to show you like how crazy Harvey Dent is getting, and to the point where it's like it's too late. And he's got these like he's got the multiple personalities going on. He's dealing with something he thinks is the multiverse and choice and destiny and like just craziness. So yeah, I think Catwoman had it right because it kind of boils down to Catwoman thinking like he's crazy, you can't help him, and of course Bruce is like, he's my friend, I got to try to help him.
So in terms of the book and as it develops, we get Drake figuring out who Bruce and Batman are, that they are the same person, and I have to say it was much better than the way that Joseph Gordon-Levitt figured it out in The Dark Knight Rises. And yeah, I do give them some credit for the way that Drake is able to use his ingenuity and just kind of figure things out and using what I would say are kind of street smarts. And we do get a lot of interactions between Harvey as well as Barbara because they are dating one another, and needless to say, it turns into a bit of an entanglement. And one of my other favorite things, I would say probably my favorite aspect of the book in some ways, is just the fact that Catwoman is. I almost wish that we had more of Catwoman, just because Michelle Pfeiffer played that character so well, and you see so much of that energy being put into the book. Just the way that the artist's rendering of her, the fact that she's only wearing long sleeves because of what happened, like it really feels like her character is underexplored in a lot of ways. But just the chaos that she brings to the plot, I think is tremendous. And I love the way that she is used completely differently than in Batman Returns. That she is not a villain, and in some ways, like, she wants to be a hero, but she just can't do it. Like, she just cannot be the person that Bruce / Batman wants her to be. And in the end, like, she's the one that puts Harvey Dent out of his misery. But just the role that Catwoman plays, I really appreciated. And it's a shame that we will never see this in movie form, because Michelle Pfeiffer, just like Billy D. Williams, I think Michelle Pfeiffer would have been tremendous in this role.
Yeah, even for like coming back in a shorter kind of role, because if you kind of time out her scenes, like based on the amount of scenes we got in the comic, she's more like a background role, literally. And you find out that later on that like the cat that she leaves behind that year or so ago that they last encountered has a microphone in it, and she's been microphoning Batman for a year, and it's like, whoa, dude. You're supposed to have like this great protection on your house, and just let this slide. And he's like, hey, whatever, I'm in love. He doesn't want to admit it, but he's totally in love with her. And I love that little aspect. And I love I think my favorite line between the two, when he's like, I've been thinking about taking you away for 3 weeks into Mexico or blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, yeah? And then, and then like was like, oh man, like they really dig each other, and it sucks because they can't really. I mean, they could, but it's just the fact it's the moral issue. You know what I mean? That boils down at the end, because it really boils down to she's willing to kill and he's not, and that's basically what it boils down to. And that's always going to be that fundamental issue for Batman, unless you're Batman Affleck, who's taken shit for 30 years and just doesn't give a fuck anymore, which I appreciate. But when you're in this level of thinking, this morality issue with, especially like a year four kind of Batman that deals with these kind of things, like especially like we forgot to mention that earlier in the comic, I think it was issue one or two, that he accidentally causes like a cop shooting an innocent woman in her home, and it was his fault. Like it was totally his fault. Like he should have been there anyway. So he's living that guilt.
Yeah, and he goes on a break because of that, and it clearly affects his psyche. And you can imagine in a longer work, like if this were 12 to 18 issues, like if you could do multiple issues without Batman. And I actually think that one of the things that, just like the Michael Keaton movies, I'm not sure that we necessarily got enough Batman. Part of it is because of that plot thread. I think that has something to do with it. But it's really weird to me how little Batman actually does. Like he really doesn't do a lot in this run. So I'm curious to know what you thought of that, like the lack of Batman, just like in the Tim Burton movies.
Well, for me, I hardly notice it because I'm so like involved with the Bruce Wayne storyline. You know what I mean? And then the first time you see Michael Keaton's illustration on the page, it's like, holy shit, he's right there. And then it's like you kind of want to see more of him. That's kind of way I felt because it was the nostalgia of it all. You know what I mean? So I was totally cool with it. In terms of the action, I get it because even the final action sequence between Harvey Dent, Catwoman, and Bruce Wayne, he's not dressed up as Batman because he's fucking he's I think he's in a wheelchair because of the explosion that occurs in issue five where he gets totally fucked up with an explosion, which kills Jim Gordon as well. We'll get into that in a bit, but that was a shocker. But it just seems like wow, like this. It's the kind of thing that kind of a more of a mature kind of ending when you don't like want to have the, as you like to say, the big blue beam in the sky at the end of every superhero movie. This is the completely opposite of that. They kind of went with that Dark Knight kind of ending, like holding my hand, let me hold your hand, I can bring you up kind of thing, just from the Dark Knight. Except it went more brutal because Harvey Dent's hand got caught on a hook, and it was like, oh my god, like he should not be physically hanging there for that long before his hand shreds, and then it came off. I don't know if it came off. I can't remember right now, but it was just like the visual is still in my head. Like, holy shit, it tore his hand off practically. But it was brutal because Catwoman's the one that kind of pushes him off, and he's like, and Bruce is like, "What are you doing? I could have saved him." And she's like, "The dude's crazy. You can't save him. Like you're just trying too hard, and it's going to be a failure." And that's where they kind of divide at the end, and that's where they split off, and it's kind of sad. But again, it's that always going to be that division between the two. You know what I mean? That moral. Like they even tied that into the Batman. You know what I mean? Because she's willing to kill Falcone. And we'll imagine that, and we'll talk about that in a bit too. But yeah, I like that dynamic between the two.
Yeah, in this case, it's funny in this book, Harvey just shoots Falcone completely out of nowhere, which Falcone doesn't mean anything in the context of this series. So I think that is fair. It makes a lot more sense. And honestly, I mean, the Jim Gordon of the Tim Burton Batman movies was always done a really real disservice. So him dying doesn't really have that much of an impact. But I'm not gonna lie, Brian. There was a character named Jerome in this series, and he died, and I am not happy about it.
I know. I thought of you, man. I thought of you. I also thought like who would be great in this role, and I thought I can't remember his name, but the guy from The Wire who goes shit, right? Wouldn't he be perfect for that role?
Isaiah Whitlock would definitely be the a great person for the role. Yes.
Even in '93, he would have been great because what The Wire was filmed in 2000, he was still looking old then. 7 years minus is not that big of a difference, but he would have been great because he was this mentor figure towards Two Face, and they show these background flashbacks to back in the day, and you realize he got the coin from Jerome. So just these little things, and then when he killed him, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like that was like really heart wrenching. Like I did not see that coming. And when I don't see things coming like that, I think it's because I'm a bit of a smartass when it comes to movies because I just see things coming, man. I call spots all the time, but when I can't call a spot, I feel like, holy shit, you really got me. because I was like, why would he kill him? And then he's just like, he was gonna blame it on Robin, and then so it was just kind of like, wow, you know what I mean? Like this totally different side of him, and deep down he's like talking to himself and like, why did you do that? And it was like, we had to do it, you know what I mean? And it was like, oh shit, he really is like gone mentally. So that was really sad. And then you talk about Falcone, that's kind of my other gripe is that I wanted more like if you're gonna have Falcone, give us like some background and some story because we can't just assume based on prior books. Like if I'm a first time reader and I just want to follow up on my boy Michael Keaton because I just grew up on that, and I know nothing about Falcone and I never watched the Batman, you would have been like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? It was just a random dude. So you're kind of relying on that backstory knowledge from other comics that I was like, now you're kind of relying on some extra stuff here that people might not know about. You need to kind of introduce this guy and not just kill him right off the bat. So that was kind of disappointing for me personally. But at the same time, I was like, it felt good because I knew Falcone is the son of a bitch and what he does to his daughter and all that shit. So I mean, it really felt good to see him get his head, shot at. But just it felt like, man, you really had a missed opportunity there.
So I also want to point out that one of the origin stories that we get is of the penny. I don't know if that story's ever been told in another book or in another form.
Okay, I looked this up. So, because I remember reading this story when I checked out a book from the library like 15 years ago about like classic Batman comics. It's from 1947. It's like I think the first time him and Two-Face actually have an encounter at a bank. And that's the reference, and that's why there's the giant penny in his Batcave and all the Detective Comics. So this was like a cool like little nod and wink to it. And not only that, it's a giant penny. Two-Face is obsessed with coins. There's this, division going on. It just made sense to introduce it in this way, I think.
And the penny in this case literally saves Batman's life, so that's how this develops. And
of course, you got Alfred Pennyworth always saving his ass. So
yeah, I mean, he even does that a little bit. I mean, he's not out in the field, so to speak, but you definitely get.
And also that was another likeness rights that they didn't get the rights to because it clearly wasn't.
Yeah, it didn't look like Michael Gough very much at all.
Yeah, it looked more like the animated series a little bit, but I can kind of forgive that. So.
It's funny to me that so much of this is about capitalism. Like the police in Dent are literally going after Batman because he is costing them a lot of money, and it's like, well, of course that's what's going to happen. Like nothing else really matters. I mean, he got rid of the Joker, he got rid of the Penguin, so now you can just arrest him because what other villains are going to pop up and attack the city? So capitalism again, Brian. Capitalism again.
Yeah, that's what I kind of liked about this, and I know like you say like it's a little too modern, and I get it, but I think what really struck a chord with me is the rioters panel, and I think I know know what I'm talking about, where you see people like literally trying to start a riot when they're peacefully just kind of protesting, and it's other people who are not part of the group that are instigating it. And I was like, oh, this is a little too real, man, because we saw that on the news, and yeah, it was like kind of woo. I mean, I know it's supposed to be 93, but you got to think even in 93 people were doing that kind of shit. So
I mean, the Rodney King riots were just a year before, so undoubtedly this is something that would have been fresh in people's mind.
Yeah, so it does fit the timeline. Yeah, but even in like, because what we just experienced seeing the riots from 2 years ago, it just seems so like, oh my god, like this feels so now. But again, that's just kind of what politics are and social classes, and they're always going to be clashing. So
yeah, for sure. So just a lot to say with this book in terms of how interesting it is. And again, I don't think this is a groundbreaking piece of material, but I really appreciate the fact that we have something like this and that it exists and that we get some sort of a payoff to some of the things that we had seen in the first two films. So yeah, I very much enjoyed this a lot, and it was a good experience to just kind of watch it or to read it and to go through this. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else you want to bring up?
that's about it. I want to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, reading it with the ambiance music really elevated it. Even being stoned at like 1 a.m. for the experience, it's like, wow, this is a great experience. I'm telling you, man, ambiance music and reading, I never thought of it, but it just really elevated the feel. So I guess I'm gonna start doing that kind of thing. So, but yeah, just like some of the likeness rights, you can kind of like, you kind of wish they went full, full likeness rights. But again, it's just, that was 30 years ago. What can they do? But overall, I just kind of wanted more Jim Gordon and Barbara Gordon kind of stuff. And if you're gonna give me Falcone, give me some backstory on Falcone. But again, limited 6-run issue. They can only do so much. But if you were to, if you don't really read comic books and love comic book movies, and you read this will feel like when you see like a storybook, you know what I mean, or like the shot scenes or whatever. It feels like that. So when you read it, it does feel like a movie when you do read it. So.
Yeah, I could see that. So before we go on, I have a couple of other topics that I want to bring up for this special 100th episode. Brian has not watched Harley Quinn yet, but we are probably in 2 weeks going to do a full discussion of the Harley Quinn season because, Brian, the 8th episode of season 3 might be one of the best pieces of Batman media that has ever aired. And yeah, that may be hyperbole to you, but I have to tell you, Brian, I am so excited. So excited for this. And I am very, very curious to see what's going to happen with it. There's still 2 episodes to go as we are recording this, but Brian, I am so excited for you to see this entire season because it's great. And season 8 especially, or episode 8 especially, is great.
Yeah, I when I first started watching Harley Quinn, I binge watched them because it just feels like it's the kind of bingeable show that you want to binge on in like 3 or 4 hours. You know what I mean? It's just so compact, and the episodes are tight, and the one-liners are just so snappy and funny, man. So I enjoy it when I binge it. So that's what I'm kind of doing right now. I'm kind of focused on that Lord of the Rings show that just came out. So yeah, and of course we don't talk about it much, but me and Jerome are big What We Do in the Shadows fans. So we got the finale coming up on that one too as we record this. So I'm excited for that one. So yeah, some shows are going on right now. In terms of Marvel, She-Hulk, I don't know, man. I never watched Ally McBeal, and I'm starting to know. I'm starting to see why I never watched Ally McBeal or Boston Legal.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. David E. Kelly knows how to write legal dialogue. She-Hulk is a program about a lawyer that doesn't know how to write legal dialogue. And the fundamental problem with She-Hulk is it's trying to be too many things. We're talking about 30-minute episodes. We're talking about just a lot of stuff being thrown at the wall. Like you're breaking the fourth wall, but you're only sort of doing it like 2 or 3 times an episode. So is that really effective? The show looks terrible. I'm not talking about the CGI because I think it's okay. She-Hulk looks okay. But just the show in general, and this is a criticism that I have about a lot of Disney Plus stuff, is it looks terrible. I thought the Obi-Wan show looked really, really bad. And I think that a lot of Disney Plus shows, they cost a lot of money, but when they look like crap, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, if it's because they're shooting so much in the volume now, but these shows look bad. And this is something they have to fix because I'm sorry, if you are Disney and you have Star Wars and Marvel, if this looks like crap, people are going to stop watching it. And you're going to get to that point. We are in too competitive of a TV market now to do that. And especially when we're talking about the She-Hulks and the Andors and things of that nature, like we're not talking about the A material here. You got to produce good stuff. Otherwise, people are going to stop watching it. And I would be very curious to see what the viewership numbers are for She-Hulk. But in my opinion, the thing I'm going to say about this is that Harley Quinn is the best superhero. It's the best superhero show. For me, I think even though it doesn't have necessarily the restrictions that a She-Hulk has, but the fact that it can do the things that it does, it makes for a much better experience. And I'm very much looking forward to talking about this. I mean, we're not going to do I don't see the value in us doing full episodes on She-Hulk or Ms. Marvel because the things that we talk about are just going to be the same things that we've talked about for every single Marvel TV show that has been exist since the beginning of existence. I think the lead performances are really good, but the show looks like crap and there's too much going on. And I generally think, with the exception of Loki and to an extent WandaVision, I think that's been how it is, unfortunately. And there's a lot of discussion about what the future of the MCU even looks like these days, and just there's a lot of consternation because Doctor Strange and Hulk and Thor: Love and Thunder, not, I would say, a mixed bag. Very financially successful, no doubt, but I think there's a little bit of disappointment in a summer that did not have a lot of big movies. The fact that Top Gun is the movie that kind of stole everybody's hearts, I think. And never underestimate the power of Tom Cruise, but it feels weird in this summer when there was a lot of empty spots. It felt like Doctor Strange and then Thor: Love and Thunder just did not. They did not hold people's attention, and I think that says a lot.
Well, for me, She-Hulk, I don't know. It just seems like you said, the main attraction for me is the cameos, obviously, because I was like, Wong's on this episode? I guess I gotta watch it. Banner's on this episode? I guess I gotta watch it. And that's kind of what it is for me. Like, I'm not against Megan Thee Stallion. I'm not a fan. So it didn't really matter for me, but I know a lot of women love Megan Thee Stallion, and they want more women to watch the program. So I get it. But just, I don't know, some of the criticism I've been reading, it's like, I guess the Wrecking Crew is not what the fans wanted to see because they came off like geeks. I didn't even know who the Wrecking Crew were. And then I texted my friend, I was like, who are these geeks that She-Hulk just beat up? And he was like so sad when he responded, like, man, that's the Wrecking Crew, man. They're supposed to be tight and tough and all. I was like, okay, man, sorry, they're geeks now. And he was kind of disappointed with that. So I was like, I don't know. Sorry, man. But the CGI is what it is. I personally would have just maybe found a body double and just did a Lou Ferrigno style. But, not a lot of people look like China, you know what I mean, to pull that off. So they kind of had to do CGI, I guess. So it's kind of...
Tatiana Maslany is not the problem. I think she takes, again...
No, that's not. Yeah, it's just like when you have a Hulk, you know what I mean. You need that size, so you gotta either do CGI or find a body double. So like Lou Ferrigno, but it just the timing of it all. I don't know, and maybe it's just too much because now we're like thinking like, why is Hulk in space? Why does Hulk have a cell phone that works in space? Why is he even going into space? Is he going to Sakaar? And then you got all this other side shit, and then it's like, why does Wong need the Abomination? Why did he get the Abomination out of jail anyway? Did he really need the Abomination for the Kumite? So it's like they're kind of getting lost in their continuity with this, and I know it's kind of like, okay, don't walk over don't walk over each other's toes too much before you just kind of like fuck up the continuity.
That Abomination scene literally was a year ago, and now we're bringing it up, and I don't necessarily have an issue with it because I don't think like that is not the problem. But I think it is representative of we are trying to do just way too much in Phase 4. Phase 4 is going to end with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And Brian, the best way that I could talk to you about the way this movie seems is picture the last 10 minutes of Fast 7, except it's going to be the whole 2 hours. And I don't know that I'm ready for this movie. I'm going to see this trailer a million times because I go to the theater, and this is one of the only big movies that is opening the rest of the year. And I'm going to see this trailer so much. But it's a really good trailer, and I don't know that I'm ready for it.
No one is. I mean, I watched the trailer for the first time at work at the end of the night, sweating my ass off, and I started tearing up, even with the sweat burning in my eye. So that speech, man, that she gave, Angela Bassett, man, unbelievable. Like, fuck it, if she's that good in the movie, in the trailer, and in the movie, man, just push her for an Oscar nomination. Let's shock some people and bring back some names for the Oscars. Brendan Fraser is another name that's coming up. So I think Oscars next year is going to be interesting from a name standpoint if things play out, because the word on the street is this is going to be the best MCU movie, from what I've heard. From Kevin Smith running his mouth, talking about having friends in the industry and the CGI departments or whatever, saying they've seen the footage and it's like the most unbelievable MCU movie. But that what it is just giant catharsis, emotional catharsis and farewell to a legend kind of thing. So everybody's going to be feeling it. But at the same time, it's like, I guess we're just going to have this giant like cry all together as a worldwide audience and celebrate this man's life. I think that's what it's going to come down to. and it's going to be this emotional thing, and then some surprises at the end because it looks like we're getting Namor, and it looks like they're kind of slightly ripping off some Avatar imagery, but I don't know who shot first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a little weird. I mean, Avatar's been shot for like 6 or 7 years at this point.
But I don't know if like there was blue people with Namor in the '60s. You know what I mean? Like I can't really say, but I just found it weird that there was blue people as well. But the visual imagery of that birth, that underwater birth, man, that's some shit that I would not even think of. So I think Ryan Coogler.
I mean, clearly it's T'Challa's son. Clearly that's what they're going for.
Wow, I did not even think of that, man. I just did. Wow, you threw. That's a new one. Okay. Wow.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious. Like immediately, that's what came to mind.
See, people have what I've seen is like some people think that's the birth of Namor that we see in that shot because it's underwater.
I no what? No, get out of here. That doesn't even make sense.
I don't know. That's what people said. I don't know because I mean the way that trailer kind of times out, it's like, what's going on? Is this all flashback? But then Namor comes out of the water, so
Nakia's the mom, and yeah, that's clearly what's going on here.
we'll see because we still got that shot of the suit at the end, and everyone's like, oh, "Who's in the suit? Who's in the suit?" So I like that little mystery tag at the end.
I mean, it's clearly Shuri. Clearly, it's Shuri, right?
I mean, the way that they accidentally reveal that she disappears halfway through the movie through a bit of dialogue. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, because the Angela Bassett line about her whole family is gone.
Her losing, yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think that's the clue, and you're supposed to figure out from there. But I trust Ryan Coogler for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully she went away and got vaccinated and stopped being a transphobe as well.
We'll see. We'll see what the what the those press junkets are like. Because if you remember those press junkets for Infinity War and how loose and fun everybody was from all the different casts, let's see if that kind of holds up. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see how.
Well, Letitia Wright had to leave Twitter because she was being a bad person on there, and we'll see how the media tour is this time because I think look, some people are going to ask her about being vaccinated and some of the stuff she's retweeting, and they should because it was awful. It was truly awful, and it made me not want to see this movie. And look, I'm going to see the movie, but I'm very trepidatious about just her continuing to be in the MCU, just as I am with Chris Pratt also being in the MCU because the religious institution that he's a part of is also awful, and I don't want to see awful people succeed, but hopefully the movie's good and hopefully some growing up has happened. One more thing I wanted to talk about. So we talk about how She-Hulk looks like garbage. Lord of the Rings, Brian. I know you are really excited about this show. I was very much not looking forward to it. I read some reviews and they're like, the show is good, and I watched it and I agree. I think the show is super fun. It's super chill. Like clearly they're building up to something, but I love the fact that it's just kind of a fun show to watch, and it's not like Game of Thrones with all the blood and the guts and all that stuff. And that certainly has its place in fantasy, but I like that we're just kind of getting a chill, like fun, enjoyable watch with some mystery. I think the show looks very, very good. You've got some horniness involved. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, when I watched the first episode, I was like, okay, I think I understand what's going on now because when I was going into the show, I was like, what's the main hook? What is the main hook? And then with Galadriel kind of being the main anchor of it all, I guess you'd say, and then the kind of the thing where they reveal that the first battle with Sauron already took place. They think Sauron's gone, but of course he's not gone because there's still going to be that battle of the rings later on that we see in Fellowship of the Ring. So then it becomes, oh shit, like he's in disguise. So now it's become, for me, like the show for me has become like a Hitchcock kind of thing where it's like you're trying to figure out who's Sauron. And that's what I'm enjoying about it, especially when I go to the second episode. I'm like, I'm probably in this in a totally mental like state than like different people. I'm not just talking about getting stoned before watching Lord of the Rings either. I'm talking about like looking for clues of who Sauron is because I don't think people are picking up on that. Like the casuals, I don't think are picking up on that. They're just enjoying the show. But for me, who was like, oh shit, Sauron is this, he's the main bad guy. So if he's gone and they think he's gone, he's probably in disguise. And I've read that he has been in disguise before. So I'm like, okay, is this the guy? Is this the guy? And then hopefully by like episode 7 or 8, it's going to be a big reveal. And that's going to be what it is leading up to. And then this mystery guy from the sky, for all we know, that could be a wizard or something. Because I guess
it's got to be Gandalf, right?
I don't know for a fact it's Gandalf because according to what I've read online in terms of chronology of Lord of the Rings, like he wasn't even the first wizard. I guess there were 5 wizards and he was the last one to come, but they came on a boat from some other land. But I guess because they have the rights now, they can change it up a bit to, make it a TV show and make it more dramatic or whatever and have a guy fall from the sky, right? And he's really, really tall and you're supposed to just feel like, oh, is this Gandalf? But I think the twist is going to be that it's Sauron. The Christopher Lee. Because he was the first one, I guess Christopher Lee was the first one, if you know what I'm talking about, the first wizard to come to Middle-earth. So maybe they're just kind of switching it around, and this is going to be like Sauron, or Saruman, and then you see how he becomes this evil asshole down the line.
Yeah, for sure. So just some fun stuff. Next week, we will be returning to discussing Spider-Man, the animated series. We will be discussing the first 3 episodes of that, so definitely make sure that you are caught up. And Brian has been sending me some DMs, and I've got some questions which we will address on next week's episode. Right, Brian?
I mean, I guess he's Russian. I guess Peter Parker is Russian, people, and we just kind of forgot about that?
Apparently so. But we'll talk about that next week. We will be discussing whether Peter is a Putin asset, apparently. For Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.
So you know how they kind of tease in that headline that says UFOs flying over Metropolis? Imagine the after credits scene, and Nicolas Cage comes down dressed as Superman with his long hair, and he sees Batman in the cave, and he goes, "Put the bunny back in the box."